Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Let's start with a Bible verse, Isaiah 41:10. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. Today, my heart feels heavy. I am truly upset and sad because I feel like you are not understanding me, my emotions, my love for you, and the effort I put into every story. In my last video, I shared a beautiful moment from life, something so special to me, yet there was no response. No words from you, my family. It makes me wonder, am I disturbing you with my words? Am I sharing too much? Maybe I should stay quiet and not trouble you with my emotions anymore, but no matter what, my love for you remains strong. I just wish for you to feel the same connection I feel when I share my heart with you. Let's move into today's story. The Miami skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the deepening twilight, a view Beau Prince never tired of from his corner office on the 48th floor of Prince Industries headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows transformed the space into an observatory of the city's perpetual dance between light and shadow. The last rays of sunset painted the sleek glass and steel buildings in hues of amber and rose, a daily reminder of why he'd chosen to build his empire in this vibrant city. At 35, Beau had achieved what most would consider the pinnacle of success. His company, started in a cramped garage with nothing but determination and a revolutionary idea for sustainable tech, now occupied one of the most prestigious addresses in downtown Miami. The quarterly report spread across his custom-designed desk told a story of continued growth, innovation, and market dominance. Yet as he studied the numbers that would make his shareholders ecstatic, he felt the familiar hollow ache in his chest. 5 years. It had been 5 years since Sarah's betrayal had shattered his world and reshaped his understanding of trust. The memory still had the power to make his jaw clench, finding out that his then-fiancée had been selling company secrets to their biggest competitor, all while planning their wedding. The double betrayal of both heart and business had left scars that ran deeper than anyone suspected. Running his fingers through his sandy brown hair, now streaked with subtle hints of grey at the temples, Beau turned away from the mesmerizing view. His office reflected the man he'd become in the aftermath of that betrayal, disciplined, controlled, and impeccably organized. Every surface gleamed with purpose, from the polished mahogany desk to the carefully curated art pieces that spoke of power and precision. The room was a testament to his success, but also to his isolation. The soft chime of his intercom broke through his brooding thoughts. "Mr. Prince," his assistant's voice carried its usual efficient tone. "Your 4 o'clock is here, Ms. Iridessa Dale, for the VP of Operations interview." Beau straightened his charcoal grey tie, a habit born of years in the spotlight. "Send her in, Claire." He moved to stand near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his preferred position for first meetings. It wasn't about intimidation. He'd learned early that true power didn't need such obvious displays. Instead, it was about perspective, allowing candidates to see the scope of what Prince Industries had built and what it could offer. The door opened with a whisper of well-oiled hinges, and Beau felt the air in the room shift before he even turned around. There was something in the quality of the silence that made him pause, a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. When he did turn, the sight of Iridessa Dale stopped his carefully prepared greeting in his throat. She stood in the doorway with the poise of someone who knew their worth down to their bones. Her deep brown skin seemed to glow with an inner light, complemented perfectly by the sophisticated cream suit she wore. Her natural curls were styled in an elegant updo that spoke of both professionalism and cultural pride. But it was her eyes that caught and held his attention. intelligent, determined, and holding depths that hinted at stories he found himself wanting to know. "Mr. Prince." Her voice carried the warmth of summer honey tempered with professional courtesy. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today." She crossed the room with graceful confidence, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. Her handshake was firm and assured, her smile genuine but measured. As they settled into the seating area, a carefully arranged set of leather chairs chosen for both comfort and subtle status, Bo found himself intrigued by the way she took in the room. Her gaze was analytical but appreciative, missing nothing but remaining respectful. It was the look of someone who understood the language of power, but wasn't intimidated by it. "Your reputation precedes you, Miss Dale," Bo began, noting how she met his gaze without hesitation. "Your work on sustainable technology implementation at Global Tech has been impressive." He watched for any sign of false modesty or overconfidence, finding neither. "Thank you," she replied, her voice carrying the slight hint of a smile, "though I prefer to let results speak for themselves." She opened her portfolio with practiced ease, revealing meticulously organized presentations and projections. "I've prepared a comprehensive overview of how I believe Prince Industries could optimize its operations while expanding its commitment to sustainable practices." What followed was unlike any interview Bo had conducted in years. Iridessa's presentation wasn't just thorough, it was visionary. She had analyzed Prince Industries' current operations with remarkable insight, identifying opportunities for improvement that even his current team hadn't spotted. But it was the way she wove sustainability and social responsibility into every proposal that truly caught his attention. "The future of tech isn't just about innovation," she explained, her passion evident in every word. "It's about responsible innovation. Prince Industries has the potential to set new standards for how technology companies operate in harmony with both the environment and communities they serve." Bo found himself leaning forward, caught up in the clarity of her vision. "You're suggesting a complete overhaul of our supply chain," he noted, both challenged and intrigued by the boldness of her proposals. "I'm suggesting an evolution," she corrected gently, pulling up detailed projections that showed both short-term costs and long-term benefits. One that would position Prince Industries as a leader in sustainable tech for decades to come. As she walked him through the specifics, Bo couldn't help but notice the subtle ways her presentation acknowledged the unique challenges she'd faced in her career. As one of the few black women executives in Miami's tech scene, she had fought twice as hard to earn her position. That experience showed in every detail of her work: the thorough research, the innovative solutions, the careful consideration of multiple perspectives. "These implementation timelines are ambitious," he commented, testing her resolve. Iridessa's smile held a hint of steel. "They're realistic for someone who understands both the technology and the human elements involved. I've built my career on turning ambitious goals into measurable results." The interview extended well beyond its scheduled time, their discussion flowing from operational strategies to market trends to the future of sustainable technology. Bo found himself repeatedly impressed not just by her knowledge, but by her ability to connect different aspects of the business in innovative ways. As the Miami sun began to set, painting his office in warm golden light, Bo realized something that both excited and unsettled him. He wasn't just considering hiring an exceptional VP of operations. He was meeting someone who could genuinely challenge him, someone whose brilliance and integrity shone through every word and action. The way the fading sunlight caught the subtle golden undertones in her skin and made her eyes sparkle with determination stirred something in him that he'd thought long buried. It wasn't just physical attraction, though she was undeniably beautiful. It was recognition of a kindred spirit, someone who understood the weight of ambition and the price of success. When she finally gathered her materials to leave, Bo found himself standing perhaps a moment too quickly. "Thank you for your time, Miss Dale," he said, extending his hand. "You've given us a lot to consider." Her handshake was as confident as when she'd arrived, but now there was a warmth in her smile that spoke of shared understanding. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Prince. I look forward to hearing your decision." As she walked out of his office, her head held high and her steps purposeful, Beau remained standing by the windows, watching the city lights begin to twinkle to life. For the first time in 5 years, he felt something shift in his carefully ordered world. The walls he'd built around his heart hadn't crumbled, but they had developed a hairline crack, one that whispered of possibilities he'd thought forever closed to him. That evening, as he reviewed her resume and presentation materials for the 3rd time, Beau realized he was standing at a crossroads. Hiring Iridessa Dale would mean more than just bringing exceptional talent to Prince Industries. It would mean opening himself up to change, to new perspectives, to the possibility of trust. The city lights reflected in his office windows like stars fallen to earth, and somewhere in their gleam, Beau Prince began to imagine a future different from the solitary path he'd resigned himself to walking. Whether that future would lead to professional success alone or something more remained to be seen, but for the first time in 5 years, he was curious to find out. Chapter 2. The Test. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Beau Prince's penthouse apartment, but he'd been awake for hours, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. 3 months had passed since Iridessa Dale had walked into his office and transformed Prince Industries' operations with her innovative approaches and unwavering dedication. Her presence had brought new energy to the company, challenging old assumptions and pushing boundaries in ways that both excited and unnerved him. Standing at his floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee cooling in his hand, Beau watched Miami come alive below. The city was a tapestry of morning light and shadow, much like the thoughts swirling in his mind. Iridessa had proven herself beyond any reasonable expectation, streamlining operations, implementing sustainable practices that had already shown remarkable returns, and earning the respect of even the most skeptical board members. But it was more than her professional excellence that occupied his thoughts. Every interaction with her seemed to chip away at the walls he'd built around his heart. The way her eyes lit up when discussing new possibilities for the company, the quiet strength with which she handled challenges, the grace and dignity she showed even in the face of subtle prejudices, it all spoke to a character that both intrigued and intimidated him. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus Chen, his oldest friend and CEO of rival tech company Nexus Innovations. The message was simple. "Coffee? Got something interesting to discuss." 2 hours later, Beau sat across from Marcus in a private booth at their favorite cafe in Brickell, the financial district's gleaming towers reflecting the late morning sun. Marcus, ever the picture of calculated casual in his designer jeans and perfectly tailored blazer, wore an expression that Beau knew all too well, the look of someone with a scheme in mind. "We want her," Marcus said without preamble, sliding a folder across the table. "Iridessa Dale. We're prepared to make her an offer she won't be able to refuse." Beau's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips, his heart rate picking up despite his outwardly calm demeanor. "What kind of offer?" Marcus's smile was all business. "Chief Innovation Officer, full autonomy over our sustainable tech division, double her current salary, significant equity stake." He leaned back, studying Beau's reaction. "Plus, we're launching a major initiative to diversify our executive team. She'd be perfect as the face of that campaign." The proposal hit Beau like a physical blow, though he maintained his poker face. The offer was incredible, exactly the kind of opportunity someone of Iridessa's caliber deserved. But the thought of losing her to Nexus, of seeing her brilliant mind applied to a competitor's vision, created an ache in his chest that went beyond professional concern. Then, in a moment of clarity that felt like lightning striking, Bo saw an opportunity. The memory of Sarah's betrayal 5 years ago still haunted him, making it difficult to trust his judgment when it came to matters of the heart. But here was a chance. A way to know for certain if Iridessa was different. "When are you planning to approach her?" Bo asked, his mind already formulating a plan. Marcus shrugged. "End of the week. Want to give her time to consider it before the new quarter starts?" Bo nodded slowly, taking another sip of his now lukewarm coffee. "Let me handle it," he said, surprising both Marcus and himself. At his friend's raised eyebrow, he added, "If she's going to leave, I'd rather hear it from her directly." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, but Bo's mind kept returning to the folder in his briefcase and the choice he was about to present to Iridessa. As the afternoon sun began to paint Miami's skyline in shades of gold, he asked Claire to send Iridessa to his office. She entered with her usual grace, her burgundy dress complementing her deep brown skin perfectly. Her natural curls styled in a sophisticated twist that spoke of both professionalism and cultural pride. The sight of her made his heart race, even as guilt gnawed at him for what he was about to do. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Prince." Her voice carried its usual warm professionalism, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Over the past 3 months, their interactions had developed a comfortable rhythm, a mutual respect that sometimes felt like it could become something more. Bo gestured for her to sit, moving to lean against his desk rather than putting it between them. "I've received some information I think you should be aware of," he began, pulling out the folder Marcus had given him. "Nexus Innovations is planning to approach you with an offer." He watched her carefully as he outlined the details, the position, the salary, the equity stake, the diversity initiative. Her expression remained thoughtful, but revealed little else. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment, her eyes focused on the Miami skyline beyond his windows. "Why are you telling me this?" she finally asked, her gaze shifting back to meet his. The question was direct, penetrating, as if she could sense there was more to this than professional courtesy. Bo felt the weight of her gaze, the intensity of the moment. "Because you deserve to know all your options," he said, the words feeling inadequate even as he spoke them. "Because your contributions to Prince Industries have been extraordinary, but I would understand if this opportunity appeals to you." Iridessa stood slowly, moving to stand near the windows. The setting sun highlighted the golden undertones in her skin, creating an almost ethereal glow around her. When she turned back to face him, her expression was both gentle and resolute. "Mr. Prince." "Bo," she said, the use of his first name sending an unexpected thrill through him. "I've built my career on 2 things. Excellence and integrity. Those aren't just words to me. They're the foundation of everything I do." She moved closer, her presence commanding his complete attention. "I came to Prince Industries because I believed in its potential, in its mission, in the difference we could make together. The work we're doing here isn't just about profit. It's about creating sustainable solutions that will benefit generations to come." Her words carried the weight of absolute conviction, making the test he'd designed feel suddenly small and unworthy. "The offer from Nexus is generous," she continued, "and I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. But I didn't accept this position for the money or the title. I accepted it because I saw an opportunity to create real change, to build something meaningful." Bo felt something shift inside him, a crack appearing in the fortress he'd built around his heart. "And the diversity initiative?" he asked, needing to hear her complete response. Iridessa's smile held a touch of sadness. As one of the few black women executives in tech, I'm well aware of the importance of representation, but I won't be used as a token or a marketing tool. My work, my integrity, my commitment to excellence, those are what define me, not the color of my skin or the texture of my hair. She stepped closer still, her presence both challenging and reassuring. I chose Prince Industries because I believed it was a place where I could make a difference based on my abilities and vision. Was I wrong about that? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Bo felt shame wash over him as he realized how his test must appear to her. Another example of someone questioning her loyalty, her integrity, her worth. The walls he'd built to protect himself had nearly cost him something precious. "No," he said softly, then with more conviction. "No, you weren't wrong. You've exceeded every expectation, challenged us to be better, pushed us toward a future I hadn't even imagined was possible." He met her gaze directly, letting her see the sincerity in his eyes. "I apologize if I've given you any reason to doubt your place here." Iridessa held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Apology accepted. But Mr. Prince ... She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Trust isn't built through tests. It's built through actions, through consistency, through showing up day after day, and proving through our work and our integrity who we really are." Her words struck him like a physical blow, making him realize how his past trauma had nearly sabotaged something valuable. The first brick in his carefully constructed wall of emotional defense crumbled completely, leaving him feeling both vulnerable and strangely hopeful. "You're right," he acknowledged, running a hand through his hair. "I've learned that lesson before, but sometimes old habits die hard." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Then perhaps it's time to build new habits, starting with trust." As she turned to leave his office, Bo felt something fundamental shift in his worldview. The test he'd crafted had revealed far more about himself than about Iridessa. Her unwavering loyalty to her principles, her refusal to be defined by others' expectations, and her honest confrontation of his doubts had shown him a strength of character that no artificial test could have revealed. The Miami sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, a fitting backdrop for what felt like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Bo stood at his windows long after Iridessa had left, watching the city lights come alive below. For the first time in 5 years, he felt the possibility of something new. Something real, something built not on fear and suspicion, but on mutual respect and genuine connection. That night, as he worked late in his office, Bo found himself repeatedly drawn to thoughts of Iridessa. Not just her beauty or her brilliance, but her integrity, her dignity, her unwavering commitment to her principles. She had passed his test not by simply rejecting another offer, but by challenging the very premise of needing to be tested. In the quiet of his office, surrounded by the glittering Miami skyline, Bo Prince began to understand that sometimes the greatest test isn't of another person's trustworthiness, but of our own ability to risk being vulnerable again. The walls he'd built after Sarah's betrayal had protected him from pain, but they had also prevented him from experiencing anything real or meaningful. As he finally prepared to leave for the night, Bo made a decision. The next day, he would tell Marcus to withdraw the offer. Not because he feared losing Iridessa to Nexus, but because he respected her too much to be part of any more games or tests. She deserved better than that. They both did. The elevator ride down to the parking garage gave him time to reflect on how much had changed in just one day. The fortress around his heart had developed its first significant crack, and through that crack, hope had begun to shine through. It wasn't just hope for a potential romantic connection, though he couldn't deny his growing attraction to Iridessa. It was hope for something more fundamental, the possibility of true trust, of genuine connection, of allowing himself to be vulnerable again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for both professional and personal growth. But for the first time in 5 years, Beau Prince looked forward to those challenges with anticipation rather than dread. Sometimes, he realized, the greatest tests in life aren't the ones we devise for others, but the ones that force us to confront our own fears and limitations. As he drove home through the warm Miami night, the city lights reflecting off his car's polished surface, Beau smiled to himself. Perhaps it was time to stop testing and start trusting, not just Iridessa, but himself as well. After all, sometimes the biggest risk isn't in trusting others, but in denying ourselves the chance to experience something real and meaningful. Chapter 3. The Mistake. The digital clock on Iridessa's desk glowed 9:47 p.m., casting a soft blue light across her otherwise darkened office. Most of Prince Industries' employees had long since departed for the evening, leaving the 48th floor in peaceful silence. Through her window, Miami's skyline twinkled like earthbound stars, a view that usually brought her comfort during late nights at the office. Tonight, however, her attention was fixed firmly on her computer screen, her heart racing as she double-checked the numbers for the 10th time. $1 million. The figure glared back at her from her bank account, a sum that had appeared without warning or explanation just hours ago. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she pulled up every relevant transaction record, email, and document she could find. As Vice President of Operations, she had access to significant company resources, but this transfer had come from somewhere else entirely. A banking error that had somehow deposited $1 million into her personal account. Iridessa sat back in her chair, her natural curls catching the light as she took a deep breath to center herself. In the 6 months since joining Prince Industries, she had faced countless challenges and opportunities, but none quite like this. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on her. Just weeks after Beau's test of her integrity with the Nexus offer, here was an even more direct challenge to her principles. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Maya. "Girl, you're still at the office? It's Friday night." Iridessa smiled despite her tension, typing back a quick response about needing to handle something important. She couldn't help but think about how this situation might appear to others. As one of the few black women executives in Miami's tech scene, she was acutely aware of how her every action could be scrutinized and judged. $1 million banking error landing in her account would raise eyebrows at best, and at worst. She pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. Her fingers moved deliberately across the keyboard as she began documenting everything. The time she discovered the transfer, the account details, all relevant transaction numbers. Years of experience had taught her the importance of maintaining a clear paper trail, especially in situations like this. The soft ding of the elevator outside her office made her look up. Through the glass walls, she saw a familiar figure stepping out, Beau Prince himself, his tie loosened and jacket slung over his shoulder. Their eyes met through the glass, and she felt the now familiar flutter in her stomach that his presence always seemed to inspire. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked, leaning against her doorframe with a casual grace that belied his position as CEO. In the months since their confrontation over the Nexus offer, their relationship had evolved into something both professional and personal, though neither had put a name to the growing tension between them. "Something like that," Iridessa replied, gesturing to her screen. "We have a situation I need to address." Beau moved into her office, his expression shifting from casual to concerned as he noted her serious tone. What kind of situation? A banking error, she said, turning her monitor so he could see. Someone mistakenly transferred $1 million into my personal account this afternoon. I've been tracking down the source and documenting everything before I contact the bank. She watched his face carefully as he processed this information, noting how his eyes widened slightly at the amount. But there was no hint of suspicion in his gaze, only respect and something that looked almost like admiration. Most people wouldn't be quite so quick to report $1 million windfall, he observed, pulling up a chair to sit beside her desk. Iridessa met his gaze steadily. Most people haven't spent their entire careers building a reputation based on excellence and integrity. The words echoed their conversation from weeks ago, and she saw recognition flash in his eyes. Besides, I've worked too hard to have anyone question my success or my character. Bo nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. Let me help. 2 sets of eyes are better than 1, and this could take a while. The offer surprised her, though perhaps it shouldn't have. In recent months, she'd seen this side of him more often. The man behind the CEO facade, someone who cared deeply about doing the right thing and supporting his team. Together, they began the painstaking process of tracing the erroneous transfer. Hours ticked by as they pored over banking records and transaction logs. Iridessa couldn't help but be aware of his proximity, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way their hands would occasionally brush as they pointed to different items on the screen. Here, Bo said around midnight, pointing to a sequence of numbers. Looks like it was a decimal point error in an automated transfer system. Instead of $10,000 for the Sustainability Initiative grant, someone coded it as $1 million. Iridessa leaned closer to verify his finding, her shoulder brushing against his. The contact sent a small shiver through her that had nothing to do with the office's late-night air conditioning. Good catch. Let me document this and draft an email to the bank's error resolution team. As she typed, she could feel Bo watching her, his presence both comforting and distracting. When she glanced over, she found him studying her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. You know, he said softly, most executives I know would have waited until Monday to deal with this, or at least until normal business hours. Iridessa's fingers paused on the keyboard. I couldn't, she admitted, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because I understand the weight of perception. As a black woman in this position, I don't have the luxury of casual mistakes or questionable situations. Everything I do is scrutinized through multiple lenses. Bo was quiet for a moment, processing her words. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice carrying genuine regret. I'm sorry that you have to think about these things, that excellence isn't enough on its own. Don't be sorry, she replied, turning to face him fully. Be aware. Use your position to help create change. That's one of the reasons I chose to stay at Prince Industries, because I believed we could build something different here, something better. Their eyes met in the dim light of her office, the moment charged with unspoken possibilities. Bo reached out slowly, his hand covering hers where it rested on the desk. We are, he said softly. You're helping us become better every day. The touch of his hand sent warmth spreading through her body, but Iridessa made herself focus on finishing the email. She had worked too hard to let anything, even this growing attraction between them, interfere with her professional responsibilities. As she hit send on the detailed explanation to the bank, Iridessa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. The whole situation would be documented and resolved properly, leaving no room for speculation or doubt. Thank you, she said, turning back to Bo. For staying, for helping. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he replied simply. Then, with a slight smile, besides, I think we both know I owed you one. after that Nexus situation. The reference to his earlier test might have been awkward, but instead it felt like acknowledgement of how far they'd come. Iridessa found herself smiling back, appreciating his ability to admit his mistakes and grow from them. "Well, now we're even," she said, beginning to gather her things. The clock now showed well past midnight, and exhaustion was starting to set in. "Let me drive you home," Bo offered, standing to help her with her coat. "It's late, and you shouldn't have to deal with parking at this hour." Iridessa hesitated for a moment, weighing the propriety of accepting a ride from her CEO against her genuine fatigue. "Are you sure? I don't want to take you out of your way." "I'm sure," he said, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "It's the least I can do after you've spent your Friday night protecting the company's integrity." The elevator ride down to the parking garage was quiet but comfortable, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Bo's Tesla purred to life as they approached, its doors opening automatically. As they drove through Miami's still bustling streets, Iridessa found herself relaxing into the leather seat, the events of the evening finally catching up with her. "You know," Bo said as they waited at a red light, "what you did tonight. It just reinforces what I've known since you first walked into my office. You're exceptional, Iridessa, not just in your work, but in who you are as a person." The sincerity in his voice made her heart flutter, but she kept her response professional. "I just did what needed to be done." "That's exactly my point," he said, glancing over at her. "You did what needed to be done, without hesitation, without weighing the personal benefit against the right thing. Do you know how rare that is?" As they pulled up outside her apartment building, Iridessa turned to face him fully. "Thank you," she said softly, "not just for the ride, but for understanding why this was so important to me." Bo's hand found hers in the darkness of the car, his touch sending electricity through her veins. "Thank you for showing me what real integrity looks like, for teaching me that trust isn't just about big moments or dramatic choices. It's about the small decisions we make every day." Their eyes met in the dim light, and for a moment, Iridessa felt the world narrow to just this: the warmth of his hand, the intensity of his gaze, the unspoken connection building between them. But she was also aware of the security cameras in the parking garage, of the potential for gossip if anyone saw them together at this hour. With gentle reluctance, she withdrew her hand. "Good night, Mr. Prince," she said, deliberately using his formal title as a reminder of their professional relationship. "Good night, Ms. Dale," he replied, understanding in his voice. "I'll see you Monday." As Iridessa rode the elevator up to her apartment, she reflected on the evening's events. What had started as a potential crisis had turned into something else entirely. A moment of connection, of mutual understanding and respect. She had protected her reputation and integrity, yes, but she had also revealed something of herself to Bo, and he had shown her a side of himself that few people got to see. Inside her apartment, she kicked off her heels and moved to the window, looking out at the Miami skyline that had become so familiar. The city glittered with possibility, much like the future she was building at Prince Industries. A future that, despite her best professional intentions, seemed increasingly intertwined with Bo Prince himself. Her phone buzzed with a text message. From Bo. "Home safe. Thank you for reminding me what integrity looks like in action. See you Monday." Iridessa smiled, typing back a simple, "Thank you for the ride. Good night." But as she got ready for bed, she couldn't help but think about how this evening had changed things between them. The $1 million mistake had revealed something valuable, not just about her character, but about his as well. In the quiet of her bedroom, Iridessa thought about the path that had led her here. Every challenge she'd faced, every barrier she'd overcome, every moment she'd had to work twice as hard to prove herself. It had all helped shape her into someone who knew her worth and stood firmly by her principles. Tonight had been another test, not one designed by any person, but by circumstance, and in passing it, she had perhaps helped someone else learn to trust again. As she drifted off to sleep, Iridessa smiled, knowing that Monday would bring new challenges and opportunities. But for now, she was content in the knowledge that she had stayed true to herself, protected her reputation, and maybe, just maybe, taken another step towards something unexpected and wonderful. Chapter 4. Storm Rising. Miami's summer storms had a way of transforming the city's sleek, modern skyline into something almost primordial. Dark clouds rolled in from the Atlantic like ancient behemoths, their shadows turning the glass and steel towers into looming monoliths against the darkening sky. From her office on the 48th floor of Prince Industries, Iridessa Dale watched the approaching storm with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The quarterly sustainability report couldn't wait until tomorrow, not with the board meeting scheduled for first thing in the morning. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the waves of rain that had already begun to assault the surrounding buildings. Most of the office had cleared out early, heeding the Weather Service's warnings about the severity of the approaching system. A knock at her door drew her attention away from the atmospheric display. Beau Prince stood in the doorway, his usual polished appearance slightly softened by the late hour and the rolling thunder that seemed to emphasize the intimate atmosphere. "I thought I might find you still here," he said, stepping into her office. In the 8 months since she'd joined Prince Industries, these late-night encounters had become more frequent, each one charged with an energy that went beyond their professional relationship. "The sustainability report?" Iridessa nodded, grateful for his understanding of her dedication. "Almost finished. I just want to make sure the projections are solid before tomorrow's presentation." She gestured to the multiple screens displaying complex data analyses and environmental impact assessments. Beau moved closer, leaning over her shoulder to study the figures. His proximity sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the office's aggressive air conditioning. The subtle scent of his cologne mingled with the ozony smell of the approaching storm that seeped through the building's sophisticated ventilation system. "These numbers are impressive," he said, his voice low and close to her ear. "The board is going to be pleased. You've managed to increase our sustainable practices while actually improving efficiency." "That was always the goal," Iridessa replied, trying to focus on the screen rather than his presence. "Sustainability doesn't have to come at the cost of profitability. It's about finding the right balance, the right innovations." A massive thunderclap shook the windows, making them both jump slightly. The storm was directly overhead now, the rain creating sheets of water that transformed the view outside into an impressionistic blur of city lights and shadow. "Maybe we should call it a night," Beau suggested, straightening up, but not moving away. "This storm isn't going to let up any time soon." As if in response to his words, the lights flickered ominously. Iridessa's fingers flew across the keyboard, saving her work before any potential power failure. "Just let me finish this last section. We've made too much progress to risk losing anything." Beau nodded, moving to stand by the windows. His silhouette against the storm-darkened sky cut a striking figure, one that Iridessa found herself admiring despite her best intentions to maintain professional boundaries. In the months since the banking error incident, their relationship had evolved into something that defied easy categorization. More than colleagues, not quite something else, but filled with possibilities that both excited and terrified her. The lights flickered again, longer this time. Thunder rolled overhead like a locomotive, and suddenly the office was plunged into darkness. The emergency generators kicked in almost immediately, but the soft blue glow of the backup lights created an entirely different atmosphere in the space. In that moment of darkness, Iridessa had instinctively reached out, and Beau had moved toward her with equal instinct. They found themselves standing close, too close for professional comfort, his hand steadying her elbow, her palm resting against his chest. Through the fine fabric of his shirt, she could feel his heart racing, matching the rapid tempo of her own. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice barely audible over the storm raging outside. His hand hadn't moved from her arm, the warmth of his touch seeming to spread through her entire body. "Yes," she managed, though she made no move to step away. The scent of her cocoa butter lotion mingled with his cologne, creating an intoxicating combination that made it hard to think clearly. Her natural curls, which she had worn in a sophisticated updo, had begun to loosen in the humid air, and she felt a few strands brush against his cheek as he leaned slightly closer. Lightning flashed again, illuminating them in stark relief, a tableau of possibility and hesitation. In that brief, brilliant moment, their eyes met, and Iridessa saw in Beau's gaze all the complexity of their situation: desire, respect, uncertainty, and something deeper that made her breath catch in her throat. "Iridessa," he began, his voice rough with emotion, but she gently pressed her fingers against his chest, stopping his words. "We should check the backup systems," she said softly, professionally, though she couldn't quite bring herself to step away just yet. "Make sure everything critical is secured." Beau's hand slid down her arm before reluctantly releasing her, the ghost of his touch lingering on her skin. "You're right, of course," he agreed, though his eyes said something entirely different. "I'll check the server room." The physical distance as he stepped away felt like a tangible thing, an acknowledgement of the boundaries they both knew needed to remain in place. Iridessa moved to her computer, checking that all her work had been properly saved to the backup servers. The familiar tasks helped ground her, though she couldn't completely ignore the lingering awareness of Beau's presence in the room. Through the windows, Miami's skyline was a study in contrast. Areas of darkness punctuated by buildings running on their own generator power. The storm continued its assault, but somehow the office felt like a sanctuary, a space apart from the world where anything might be possible. When Beau returned from the server room, his tie was loosened and his sleeves rolled up, giving him a more casual appearance that only added to the intimacy of the moment. "Everything's secure," he reported, running a hand through his slightly disheveled hair. "But I think we're stuck here for a while. The elevators are on emergency power only." Iridessa nodded, trying to maintain her professional composure despite the flutter in her stomach at the prospect of being trapped here with him. "I should use the time to review the presentation one more time," she said, reaching for her tablet. Beau moved to sit in one of the chairs across from her desk, his presence both comforting and distracting. "Tell me more about your vision for the next phase," he said, his tone deliberately professional, though his eyes still held that intensity that made her pulse race. "I want to be prepared for any questions tomorrow." Grateful for the familiar territory of work discussion, Iridessa began outlining her plans for expanding Prince Industries' sustainable initiatives. As she spoke, she couldn't help but notice how Beau watched her, not just listening to her words, but seeing her, appreciating her passion and intelligence in a way that made her feel both empowered and vulnerable. The storm raged on outside, creating a cocoon of shared purpose and unspoken attraction around them. Lightning illuminated the office in irregular bursts, each flash seeming to reveal something new. The way Beau's hands moved as he asked questions about her proposals, the elegant line of Iridessa's neck as she consulted her notes, the growing tension in the space between them. Hours passed this way, their professional discussion occasionally interrupted by comfortable silences, filled only with the sound of rain and thunder. During one such lull, Beau spoke softly, his words almost lost in the storm's symphony. "You've changed things here, you know," he said, his gaze direct and sincere. "Not just the company's operations or our sustainable practices. You've changed how people think, how they approach challenges, how I approach challenges. Iridessa felt warmth spread through her chest at his words, even as she maintained her professional demeanor. Change was always part of the goal, she replied carefully, but it had to be the right kind of change, meaningful and sustainable. Like trust, Bo said, the word hanging between them like a question and an answer all at once. You've shown me that it's possible to build something new, something better, even after... He trailed off, but Iridessa knew he was thinking of his past betrayal, the wounds that had made him so cautious with both his company and his heart. Their eyes met across the desk, the connection between them almost palpable in the storm-charged air. Iridessa felt herself standing at a crossroads, between professional ambition and personal desire, between caution and possibility. The texture of her natural hair against her cheek reminded her of all the ways she had to be conscious of perception, of the additional scrutiny she faced as a black woman in leadership. Trust has to be earned, she said finally, her voice soft but firm. Through actions, through consistency, through respect for boundaries that exist for good reasons. Bo nodded slowly, understanding both what she was saying and what she wasn't. And when it is earned, he asked, his voice carrying a hint of hope that made her heart skip. Before she could respond, the main lights flickered back to life, breaking the spell that had fallen over them. The storm outside had begun to abate, the thunder now a distant rumble rather than an immediate presence. Reality reasserted itself in the harsh fluorescent light. They were CEO and VP, colleagues with professional responsibilities and reputations to maintain. We should probably head home, Iridessa said, beginning to gather her things. Get some rest before tomorrow's presentation. Bo stood, straightening his tie in a gesture that seemed to help him reclaim his CEO persona. Let me drive you, he offered, then quickly added, the roads might still be dangerous from the storm. Iridessa considered refusing, maintaining that professional distance that felt increasingly difficult to preserve. But the genuine concern in his eyes and the lingering energy from their shared evening made her nod in acceptance. As they rode the elevator down to the parking garage, both were aware of how the evening had shifted something between them. The storm had created a moment of vulnerability, of connection that couldn't be entirely forgotten or ignored. Yet rather than making things uncomfortable, it had somehow deepened their mutual respect and understanding. In Bo's car, the silence was comfortable, filled with unspoken possibilities. The city streets were largely empty, the storm having driven most people inside for the night. Puddles reflected the streetlights like scattered stars, creating an almost magical atmosphere. When they reached her building, Bo turned to her with an expression that made her breath catch. Thank you, he said simply, though his eyes conveyed so much more. For staying late, for your dedication, for... He paused, searching for the right words. For showing me what real strength looks like. Iridessa felt the weight of the moment, the delicate balance they were maintaining. Thank you for creating a space where that strength can make a difference, she replied, her voice soft but sure. As she made her way up to her apartment, Iridessa knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, the board presentation, professional responsibilities, and the ever-present need to navigate her position with grace and wisdom. But something had changed during the storm. Some wall had begun to crumble. Some possibility had begun to bloom. In the privacy of her home, she finally allowed herself to acknowledge the full impact of the evening, the way her skin had tingled at his touch, how his presence had filled her senses, the connection that went beyond professional respect or physical attraction. It was something deeper, something that promised both risk and reward in equal measure. The storm had passed, but its effects lingered in the charged atmosphere between them, in the possibilities that now seemed to stretch out before them like the Miami skyline after rain, clean, clear, and full of potential. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, Iridessa allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had transpired, knowing that sometimes the most powerful storms were the ones that raged within our own hearts. Chapter 5. Morning Light. Dawn painted Miami's skyline in brilliant shades of amber and rose, the first rays of sunlight transforming the city's glass towers into prisms of color. Iridessa stood at her bedroom window, coffee untouched in her hand, watching the day begin while her mind replayed every moment of the previous night. The storm, the darkness, the electricity that had sparked between her and Beau in those unguarded moments. It all felt simultaneously distant and immediate, like a dream she could still feel on her skin. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Amara. "How did the board presentation prep go? Did you get caught in that crazy storm?" The simple question carried layers of complexity. How could she explain what had happened? The professional boundaries that had blurred in the storm-darkened office, the way Beau's touch had sent shivers through her entire body, the unspoken possibilities that hung between them like charged particles in the air. Instead, she typed back a simple, "Presentation's ready. Talk later?" Before turning her attention to her morning routine. Each step was deliberate, a meditation in preparation that she'd perfected over years of navigating corporate leadership as a black woman. She moisturized her skin with careful attention, the familiar scent of cocoa butter grounding her in the present moment. Her natural curls required precise care as she styled them into a sophisticated updo that spoke of both professionalism and cultural pride. Standing before her closet, Iridessa selected her armor for the day with strategic precision. After last night's vulnerability, she needed an outfit that projected strength and confidence. She chose a deep burgundy suit that complemented her dark skin tone perfectly, its crisp lines and impeccable tailoring making a statement about power and presence. Pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother completed the look, a reminder of the generations of strong women whose shoulders she stood upon. As she applied her makeup, every stroke precise and purposeful, Iridessa couldn't help but think about the additional layers of consideration her position required. Being one of the few black women executives in Miami's tech scene meant every detail of her appearance would be scrutinized. Add to that the growing tension with Beau, and the stakes felt even higher. She'd worked too hard to have anyone question her success or suggest she'd earned her position through anything other than merit. The early morning traffic was lighter than usual, many people still dealing with the storm's aftermath. As she drove toward Prince Industries' gleaming headquarters, her mind wandered to the board presentation ahead. The sustainability initiatives she'd developed were revolutionary, potentially positioning the company at the forefront of environmentally conscious tech companies. But today, she knew the real challenge wouldn't be the data or the projections. It would be maintaining her professional composure with Beau in the room. The lobby buzzed with activity despite the early hour, employees discussing the previous night's storm as they made their way to their offices. Iridessa noticed the subtle shifts in their expressions as she passed. Some smiled with genuine warmth, others watched with barely concealed speculation. Had someone seen her and Beau last night? Had the growing electricity between them become obvious to others? The elevator ride to the 48th floor felt longer than usual, each floor bringing her closer to the inevitable encounter. When the doors opened, she nearly collided with Beau himself, who appeared to have been waiting. The surprise of seeing him so immediately made her heart race, memories of the previous night flooding back with overwhelming clarity. "Good morning, Miss Dale," he said, his voice carefully professional, though his eyes held the warmth of shared secrets. He was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, but she noticed the slight shadows under his eyes that suggested he'd slept as poorly as she had. "Mr. Prince," she replied, equally formal. They fell into step together, walking toward the conference room where the board meeting would be held. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, creating patterns on the floor that they unconsciously stepped around, a dance of light and shadow that mimicked their own careful choreography. "About last night," Bo began quietly as they approached the conference room, but Iridessa gently shook her head. "We should focus on the presentation," she said softly, though her heart ached with unspoken words. "The board will be here soon." He nodded, understanding as always. That was part of what made this so complicated. His respect for her boundaries, his recognition of the unique challenges she faced, his willingness to follow her lead in navigating their evolving relationship. It would be easier if he were less considerate, less aware, less everything that made her increasingly drawn to him. The board members began arriving, filling the conference room with the low murmur of conversation and the rustle of papers. Iridessa took her place at the podium, aware of Bo's presence at the head of the table. The sunlight streaming through the windows caught the subtle golden undertones in her skin, creating an almost ethereal glow that matched her confident demeanor. As she began her presentation, Iridessa fell into the familiar rhythm of facts and figures, projections and proposals. She'd always found comfort in data, in the clarity of numbers, and the logic of well-planned strategies. But today, she was acutely conscious of Bo's gaze, the way his eyes followed her movements, how he leaned forward slightly whenever she spoke. The board members were engaged, asking thoughtful questions that she answered with precision and insight. But it was Bo's questions that carried an extra weight, each one demonstrating his intimate understanding of both the proposals and her vision for the company's future. Their professional rapport was evident to everyone in the room, though none could guess at the underlying current of attraction that made each interaction feel like touching a live wire. Throughout the morning, they maintained their careful professional distance, but every accidental brush of hands passing documents, every shared glance during discussions, carried the weight of the previous night's almost moment. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken possibilities, making even routine interactions feel significant. During a brief break, Iridessa retreated to her office to collect additional materials. She found herself standing at her window, looking out at the Miami skyline that had witnessed their growing connection. The sun was high now, erasing the shadows that had made intimacy seem possible the night before. A soft knock drew her attention. Bo stood in her doorway, maintaining a professional distance that felt both necessary and painful. "The board is impressed," he said, his voice carrying warmth beneath its professional tone. "Your vision for sustainable technology integration is exactly what Prince Industries needs." "Thank you," she replied, turning to face him fully. "Their support means a lot." The moment stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Bo spoke again, his voice lowered to ensure privacy. "We need to talk about what happened last night." Iridessa felt her heart rate accelerate, but years of corporate training kept her expression neutral. "Yes," she agreed softly, "but not here, not now." "Dinner," he suggested, and something in his tone made it clear this would be different from their usual professional meals. "Tonight, we can discuss everything properly, away from the office." The invitation hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Iridessa knew this moment was pivotal. Accepting would acknowledge that something had shifted between them, that the professional boundaries they'd maintained were beginning to blur. "Yes," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "but somewhere private. We need to think this through carefully." The relief and joy that flashed across Beau's face made her heart flutter, even as her mind raced with considerations. How would they navigate this? What would it mean for their professional relationship? How would others perceive their connection? The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, each interaction charged with new awareness. They maintained their professional personas flawlessly, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation that made every moment feel significant. As evening approached, Iridessa sat in her office, watching the sun begin its descent over Miami. The day had brought clarity in some ways, and complications in others. She knew they needed to address what was growing between them, but the implications seemed to multiply with each passing hour. Her phone buzzed with a text from Beau. 7:30, I'll send a car. The simple message carried worlds of meaning, of possibility, of potential complications. Yes, she replied, then added after a moment's hesitation, we have a lot to discuss. As she gathered her things to leave, Iridessa caught her reflection in the window. The strong, confident executive looked back at her, every detail carefully curated to project professional excellence. But now there was something else in her expression. A softness around her eyes, a slight curve to her lips that spoke of possibilities beyond the corporate world. Tonight would change everything she knew. Whatever they decided, whatever path they chose, there would be no going back to the simple professional relationship they'd maintained before the storm. The morning light had brought clarity, but also questions that needed answers, feelings that needed to be addressed. Walking through the lobby, Iridessa held her head high, conscious as always of the eyes that followed her progress. She was still the brilliant VP of operations, still the black woman who had earned her place in corporate leadership through excellence and dedication. But now she was also someone on the brink of something new, something that could either complicate everything she'd worked for or add a dimension of joy she hadn't allowed herself to consider. The Miami evening wrapped around her as she stepped outside, warm and full of possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new considerations, new ways to navigate the complex intersection of professional ambition and personal desire. But for now, she allowed herself to feel the flutter of anticipation in her stomach, the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, it was possible to have both: career success and personal happiness, professional respect and profound connection. The sun sank toward the horizon, painting the sky in colors that reminded her of dawn. Another day was ending, but something new was beginning. In a few hours, she would sit across from Beau and have the conversation that would determine their future. Whatever they decided, she knew one thing with certainty. The morning light had changed everything, illuminating possibilities that could no longer be ignored. Chapter 6. Walls coming down. The Florida Keys stretched out before them like a string of emeralds set in turquoise waters, the late afternoon sun turning the ocean into a canvas of liquid gold. Prince Industries' annual executive retreat was being held at a luxurious resort on Key Largo, far enough from Miami to feel like an escape, but close enough to maintain connection with the home office, if needed. Iridessa stood on the balcony of her ocean view room, watching palm fronds sway in the gentle breeze. The past few weeks since their dinner had been a careful dance of professional courtesy and growing personal connection. She and Beau had maintained appropriate boundaries at work, but their weekly dinners had gradually evolved into something deeper. Conversations that stretched late into the night, sharing stories and dreams under Miami's star-filled sky. A knock at her door pulled her from her reverie. "Miss Dale?" Claire's voice called out. "Mr. Prince asked me to remind everyone about the welcome reception in 30 minutes. "Thank you, Claire," Iridessa replied, moving back into her room to finish getting ready. She'd chosen a flowing maxi dress in shades of blue and green that complemented her deep brown skin. Its elegant cut professional enough for a business function while still suitable for the resort setting. Her natural curls were styled in an elaborate updo, with a few artfully loose tendrils framing her face. The resort's grand ballroom had been transformed into a tropical paradise, with local flowers and tasteful maritime decorations, creating an atmosphere of sophisticated island charm. As Vice President of Operations, Iridessa had helped plan many aspects of the retreat, ensuring it would be both productive and enjoyable for the company's top executives. She was discussing sustainable seafood sourcing with the catering manager when she felt Beau's presence before she saw him. Over the past weeks, she'd become attuned to him in a way that both thrilled and unnerved her. When she turned, he was approaching with 2 glasses of champagne, looking devastatingly handsome in light linen pants and a crisp white shirt that emphasized his tanned skin. "You've outdone yourself with the planning," he said, offering her one of the glasses. "The board members are already raving about the accommodations." "Thank you," she replied, accepting the champagne with a smile that held just a hint of the warmth they shared in private. "But it was a team effort. Your assistant Claire was instrumental in coordinating everything." Their fingers brushed during the exchange of the glass, sending familiar sparks through her system. Even these small touches had become charged with meaning, each one a reminder of the growing connection between them that they carefully contained within professional boundaries. The evening progressed smoothly, with executives and board members mingling against the backdrop of sunset over the ocean. Iridessa moved through the crowd with practiced ease, discussing operational strategies and environmental initiatives, all while being acutely aware of Beau's presence across the room. Occasionally, their eyes would meet, and in those brief moments, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. As the reception wound down, Iridessa found herself walking along the beach, having exchanged her heels for bare feet. The sand was still warm from the day's sun, and the gentle sound of waves provided a soothing counterpoint to the thoughts swirling in her mind. "Mind if I join you?" Beau's voice came from behind her, and she turned to find him standing there, his own shoes in hand, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him at a company function. The setting sun painted everything in soft gold, including the grey at his temples that she found increasingly attractive. "It's a public beach," she replied with a small smile, but they both knew she welcomed his company. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, letting the rhythm of the waves and their footsteps in the sand create a private symphony. The stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, far more visible here than in Miami's light-polluted nights. "Do you know any constellations?" Beau asked, his voice soft in the gathering darkness. Iridessa pointed upward. "Orion's belt is easy to spot, and there's the Big Dipper." She paused, then added, "My father taught me the stars when I was young. He said knowing your way around the night sky meant you could never truly be lost." "Tell me more about him," Beau said, and there was genuine interest in his voice. They'd shared bits and pieces of their backgrounds during their dinners, but something about the night and their isolation from the usual pressures made it easier to open up. "He was a high school science teacher," Iridessa began, her voice warm with memory. "Brilliant man who could have had a prestigious research career, but he believed in the importance of inspiring young minds, especially students who might not see themselves represented in STEM fields." She smiled softly. "He's the reason I went into tech, why I believe so strongly in making space for diverse voices and perspectives." They had stopped walking, standing at the water's edge where gentle waves lapped at their feet. Beau was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. "He sounds like a remarkable man," he said finally. "I see where you get your commitment to making a difference." Iridessa turned to look at him, struck by the sincerity in his voice. "What about your family?" she asked gently. They hadn't talked much about his background, though she knew from public records that he'd built Prince Industries from scratch. Beau's gaze turned distant, focused on the horizon, where sky met sea. "My mother raised me alone," he said after a moment. "Worked 2 jobs to make sure I had opportunities she never did. When I started the company, I promised myself I'd make it successful enough that she'd never have to work again." A small smile touched his lips. "She still volunteers at the local library 3 days a week, says idle hands make for an idle mind." The vulnerability in his voice, the way he shared this piece of his history, made something shift between them. Here, away from the corporate environment and standing under a canopy of stars, they were just 2 people sharing their stories, their hopes, their truths. "Tell me about Sarah," Iridessa said softly, surprising them both with her directness. They'd never directly discussed his past relationship, though its shadow had colored many of their interactions. Beau was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he did speak, his voice carried the weight of old pain, but also the perspective that time brings. "I thought I knew her," he said, watching the waves rather than meeting her eyes. "We met at a tech conference, fell in love quickly. She was brilliant, ambitious, seemed to share my vision for what technology could achieve." He took a deep breath, and Iridessa resisted the urge to reach for his hand, knowing he needed to tell this story in his own way. "I didn't see the signs. The late-night phone calls," she said, "were with family. The interest in projects outside her department. I was so focused on building the company, on our future together, that I missed what was happening right in front of me." "How did you find out?" Iridessa asked gently. "One of our junior developers noticed irregularities in our system logs, files being accessed at odd hours, sensitive information being copied." His jaw tightened at the memory. "When I confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it, said our competitor had made her an offer she couldn't refuse. Money, position, power, everything we'd built together meant nothing compared to her ambition." The pain in his voice made Iridessa's heart ache. Without thinking, she reached out, her hand finding his in the darkness. His fingers interlocked with hers immediately, as if they'd been waiting for this connection. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Not just for the betrayal, but for how it made you question everything you thought you knew about trust and love." Beau's grip on her hand tightened slightly. "For a long time I convinced myself that focusing solely on the company was enough, that success could fill the void left by broken trust." He turned to face her fully, his eyes intense in the starlight. "Until you walked into my office and showed me what real integrity looks like." The weight of his words hung between them, heavy with implication. Iridessa felt her heart racing, even as her mind urged caution. "Beau," she began, but he gently squeezed her hand. "Let me finish," he said softly. "I know the challenges we face. The professional complications, the personal risks, the additional scrutiny you'll face as a black woman dating the CEO. I understand why you're cautious, and I respect it. But being here with you, sharing these pieces of ourselves, it makes me believe that some risks are worth taking." Iridessa looked out at the ocean, its darkness now broken only by the reflection of stars and the distant lights of boats. "My father used to say that the biggest barriers we face are often the ones we build ourselves," she said thoughtfully. "Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough." "And what do you fear?" Beau asked quietly. She turned back to him, her eyes meeting his with characteristic directness. "I fear that everything I've worked for could be overshadowed by a personal relationship, that people will question my achievements, suggest I earned my position through connection rather than competence, that I'll let down other women of color who look to me as an example of what's possible." "Your achievements stand on their own," Beau said firmly. Anyone who knows you, who has seen you work, who has benefited from your brilliant mind and unwavering integrity, knows that you've earned everything through merit alone." The conviction in his voice made her smile, despite her concerns. "And what do you fear?" she asked, turning his question back on him. Bo was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing gentle patterns on the back of her hand. "I fear that my past has made me unworthy of the kind of trust you've shown me, that I'll somehow taint your reputation or hold you back from achieving everything you're capable of, that I'll let my old wounds prevent me from fully embracing something extraordinary. Beware of fake channels using my voice and pretending to be Mr. Peter. They are scammers. Please report and unsubscribe from them. My official channel is Mr. Peter Stories. Accept no imitations." The honesty of his answer, the vulnerability it revealed, touched something deep inside her. Standing there on the beach, under a canopy of stars that her father had taught her to read, Iridessa felt some of her own carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. "Maybe," she said softly, "the real test isn't in avoiding risks, but in choosing which ones are worth taking." Bo's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch infinitely gentle. "And is this worth taking?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering with words, Iridessa closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his, in a kiss that felt like coming home and embarking on a new adventure all at once. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close as the waves lapped at their feet and the stars wheeled overhead. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Bo rested his forehead against hers. "We'll figure this out," he promised, "together, at whatever pace you're comfortable with whatever boundaries you need." Iridessa smiled, feeling both terrified and exhilarated by the step they'd taken. "Together," she agreed softly. They walked back to the resort hand in hand, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and complications. But for now, under the star-filled Florida Keys sky, they had found something rare and precious, the courage to let their walls down and trust in the possibility of love again. As they reached the point where they would need to separate to maintain professional appearances, Bo brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you," he said simply, "for helping me believe in second chances." Iridessa squeezed his hand once before letting go, her heart full of possibility. "Thank you for being worth the risk." They parted ways, each returning to their separate rooms, but something fundamental had shifted between them. The walls they'd built, his from past betrayal, hers from professional necessity, had begun to crumble, revealing the promise of something beautiful and true growing in their place. That night, as Iridessa stood on her balcony listening to the waves, she thought about her father's words about the stars. Perhaps he had been right. Knowing your way around the night sky meant you could never truly be lost. And maybe, just maybe, knowing your own heart meant having the courage to follow it, even when the path forward seemed uncertain. The ocean breeze carried the salt scent of possibility, and somewhere in the vast Florida Keys sky, a shooting star traced a path of light across the darkness, like hope made visible in the night. Chapter 7. The Dance. The annual Prince Industries Gala transformed the grand ballroom of the Biscayne Bay Hotel into a showcase of power, innovation, and elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of Miami's glittering skyline. This year's theme, Innovation for Tomorrow, perfectly reflected the company's evolution under the combined leadership of Bo Prince and his brilliantly capable VP of Operations. Iridessa stood before the full-length mirror in her penthouse apartment, her heart fluttering with anticipation. The evening gown she'd chosen was a masterpiece that made a powerful statement about both her position and her heritage. Flowing golden silk complemented her rich brown skin perfectly, the fabric catching light with every movement. Intricate beadwork traced patterns inspired by traditional African designs, creating a subtle homage to her roots while maintaining modern sophistication. Her natural hair had been styled into an elaborate updo by a specialist who understood both corporate elegance and cultural significance. Golden threads woven through her curls created a crown-like effect, while small artistic arrangements of cowrie shells added meaningful details that connected past and present. Each element had been chosen with precise intention, celebrating both her professional success and her cultural identity. "You look absolutely stunning," Maya said, circling her sister with pride, "like an African queen ruling in a modern court." Iridessa smiled, touching one of the cowrie shells delicately. "That's exactly what we were going for. Professional power with cultural pride. No compromises, no apologies." The past month since the Florida Keys retreat had required careful navigation of their developing relationship. She and Bo had chosen transparency over secrecy, meeting with the board to address potential concerns about professional conflicts. They'd established clear boundaries and reporting structures that maintained the integrity of their respective positions while allowing their personal relationship to grow. A text message from Bo lit up her phone. "Car arriving in 15 minutes. Can't wait to see you." The anticipation in his simple message made her smile deepen. He understood the significance of tonight, their first major public event as a couple, a statement about love transcending corporate politics and cultural boundaries. Maya caught her sister's expression in the mirror. "Still can't believe you're dating Bo Prince, though watching you make him work for it these past months has been entertaining." "We're building something real," Iridessa replied, adding a final touch to her makeup, "something based on mutual respect, understanding, and trust." She turned to face her sister fully. "He sees me, all of me, not just as a black woman, not just as an executive, but as a complete person." The sound of a car pulling up drew their attention. Maya helped Iridessa with her wrap, a sheer golden fabric that caught the light like captured sunshine. "Go show them what a power couple really looks like," she said, hugging her sister carefully to avoid disturbing her outfit. Bo waited beside the car, devastatingly handsome in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His breath caught visibly when he saw her, his eyes taking in every detail of her appearance with obvious appreciation. The way he looked at her, like she was both a queen and a miracle, made her heart race. "You are absolutely breathtaking," he said softly, taking her hand to help her into the car. His touch lingered, conveying volumes of emotion in that simple contact. The drive to the hotel was filled with anticipation. This would be their first major public event as a couple, and they both understood its significance. "Are you ready for this?" Bo asked, his thumb tracing gentle patterns on the back of her hand. Iridessa nodded, her golden earrings catching the light from passing street lamps. "Ready to show the world that excellence and love aren't mutually exclusive? That a black woman can be both professionally powerful and personally fulfilled?" "Absolutely." The Biscayne Bay Hotel's entrance was lined with photographers and journalists, all eager to capture Miami's elite arriving for the prestigious event. When their car pulled up, Bo squeezed her hand once before stepping out to help her from the vehicle. The camera flashes intensified as they made their entrance together, Iridessa's golden gown catching the light spectacularly. Inside, the grand ballroom took her breath away. The space had been transformed into a vision of modern elegance, with sophisticated technological displays showcasing Prince Industries' latest innovations, seamlessly integrated with classical architectural elements. As they made their way through the crowd, Iridessa was aware of the eyes following them, the whispers and speculations that their appearance together would generate. Board members and executives approached to greet them, many commenting on the success of Iridessa's recent sustainability initiatives. She handled each interaction with practiced grace, demonstrating through every word and gesture that her professional excellence remained unchanged by her personal relationship with the CEO. Ms. Dale, your recent presentation on sustainable technology integration was fascinating, said Jerome Matthews, one of the more conservative board members. I must admit, I was skeptical at first, but your results speak for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Matthews, Iridessa replied, with a warm but professional smile. I believe innovation is most powerful when it serves both profit and purpose. She could feel Beau's proud gaze on her, his presence supportive without being overwhelming. As the evening progressed, the orchestra began playing softer jazz melodies, signaling the transition to the dancing portion of the event. Beau turned to Iridessa, extending his hand with a slight bow. May I have this dance? The moment they stepped onto the dance floor, the other couple seemed to fade away. Beau's hand was warm and sure at her waist, while hers rested lightly on his shoulder. They moved together with natural grace, their months of growing closer evident in the way they anticipated each other's movements. Everyone's watching us, Iridessa murmured, though her smile never wavered. Let them watch, Beau replied softly. Let them see what real partnership looks like, in business and in life. As they danced, Iridessa couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. From their first meeting in his office to the stormy night that had sparked their connection, from the careful development of trust to the moment they'd finally acknowledged their feelings under the Florida Keys stars. Each step had been measured, considered, weighted with the additional considerations her position as a black woman executive required. The golden threads in her hair caught the ballroom lights, creating a halo effect that made her appear to glow from within. Beau couldn't take his eyes off her, his gaze filled with a mixture of pride, admiration, and deep affection that was visible to everyone watching. You know what I love most about you? He asked, as they turned gracefully across the floor. Your unwavering authenticity. You've never compromised who you are or what you believe in, not for this position, not for me, not for anyone. Iridessa's heart warmed at his words. Life taught me early that pretending to be something you're not costs too much. My father used to say, stand tall in your truth, and the right people will rise to meet you there. Wise man, Beau said softly, I'm grateful every day that you gave me the chance to rise to meet you. The music shifted to a slower tempo, and Beau drew her slightly closer, still maintaining the perfect balance between intimacy and professional decorum. Around them, Miami's elite watched their CEO finally opening his heart again, saw how he held Iridessa with a mixture of protection and respect that spoke volumes about their relationship. Some observers whispered about the significance of their public debut as a couple, the powerful white CEO and his brilliant black VP of operations. But what they saw in the way Beau and Iridessa moved together, the way they looked at each other, was something that transcended racial and corporate politics. It was partnership in its truest form, built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love. As they danced, Iridessa caught glimpses of their reflection in the ballroom's massive windows, her golden gown flowing like liquid light, Beau's strong presence perfectly complementing her own. They made a striking couple, but more importantly, they looked right together, balanced in a way that came from genuine connection rather than careful calculation. I can hear you thinking, Beau murmured, his thumb tracing small circles on her waist where his hand rested. Iridessa smiled, her eyes meeting his. Just appreciating how far we've come. A year ago, I walked into your office, determined to prove myself solely through my work. Now here we are, dancing at the gala, showing everyone that it's possible to have both, professional success and personal happiness. "You've shown me so much more than that," Beau replied, his voice carrying a depth of emotion that made her heart race. "You've shown me that trust can be rebuilt, that love doesn't have to compromise integrity, that the right person makes you want to be better in every way." The orchestra's song drew to a close, but they remained on the dance floor for a moment longer, suspended in their private bubble of understanding. When they finally stepped apart, it was with the quiet confidence of two people who knew exactly where they stood with each other. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, congratulations, and careful navigation of their newly public status. Iridessa handled every interaction with grace, her professional accomplishments standing firmly on their own merit, even as she acknowledged her personal relationship with Beau. Later, as they stood on the hotel's oceanfront terrace, taking a moment away from the crowd, Beau turned to her with an expression that made her breath catch. "You've transformed everything," he said softly. "The company, my perspective on trust and love, my whole world, dancing with you tonight, watching you command every room you enter with such grace and power. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Iridessa reached up to touch his face gently, her golden bracelet catching the moonlight. "We've transformed each other," she corrected. "You've shown me that it's possible to be strong and vulnerable, professional and personal, ambitious and in love." The Miami night wrapped around them like a warm embrace, the sound of waves mixing with the distant music from the ballroom. They had taken a risk in choosing to be together, in choosing to be public about their relationship, but standing there under the stars, both knew it had been worth it. The gala continued inside, Miami's corporate elite discussing the future of technology and innovation. But out on the terrace, Beau and Iridessa had found something more valuable than any business deal or technological breakthrough. They had found a love that celebrated their differences while cherishing their connection, a partnership that made them both better versions of themselves. Chapter 8. Whispers. The morning after the Prince Industries Gala, Miami's business pages and social media channels blazed with images from the previous night. While most coverage focused on the company's innovative initiatives and Iridessa's professional achievements, an undeniable undercurrent of speculation threaded through every article, every post, every comment section. Sitting in her sunlit office, scrolling through her tablet, Iridessa noticed the varying tones of the coverage. The words strategic hire and diversity optics appeared frequently in comment sections, each one striking like a physical blow despite her outward composure. A particularly pointed article in Tech Insider titled "Prince Industries Power Couple, Merit or Marketing" made her jaw clench, though her expression remained neutral. Claire, Beau's assistant, appeared at her door with concerns about breakroom gossip and internal message boards. Soon after, Sharon from HR arrived with reports of employees questioning potential favoritism in project assignments. Through each conversation, Iridessa maintained her professional demeanor while presenting comprehensive documentation of her merit-based decisions. "As a black woman in this position, I've never had the luxury of casual decisions," Iridessa explained to Sharon, showing her the rigorous documentation system she'd implemented. "Add my relationship with Beau, with Mr. Prince, and that scrutiny doubles. Every choice I make must be beyond reproach." When Beau arrived with news of another critical article, Iridessa remained resolute. "We knew this would happen," she said firmly. "It's why we were transparent with the board, why we established clear professional boundaries, why every decision I make is documented extensively." The subsequent board meeting became a platform for Iridessa to demonstrate her leadership's ethical foundation. Her presentation of comprehensive documentation and merit-based decisions impressed even the most skeptical board members. "The appearance of favoritism is precisely why I implemented such rigorous documentation procedures from day one," she explained. Our diversity initiatives aren't about optics, they're about excellence. The data shows that companies with diverse leadership consistently outperform their peers. Throughout the day, Bo provided unwavering support without overshadowing her capability to handle the situation. "Tell me how to support you better through this," he said. "I want to help, but I don't want to overshadow your own strength." Together, they drafted a company statement about merit-based advancement and inclusive innovation, turning challenges into opportunities for positive change. The whispers might continue, but they would respond with excellence, with documented success, with unwavering commitment to their principles. As the day drew to a close, Iridessa looked out at the Miami skyline, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new whispers, new opportunities to prove herself. But tonight, she would go home knowing that she had faced the doubts with grace and strength, supported by a partner who understood both her professional worth and her personal power. The journey wasn't easy, but it was hers, and she would continue to walk it with her head held high, letting her excellence drown out the whispers, one achievement at a time. Chapter 9. The Choice. The Miami sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, but Iridessa barely noticed as she sat in her home office, staring at the email that had arrived late the previous night. The message was from Andrea Chen, CEO of Tech Future, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious companies. The subject line was simple: opportunity for change. Iridessa had read the email at least a dozen times since its arrival. Tech Future was offering her the position of Chief Innovation Officer, with complete autonomy over their global sustainability initiatives and a compensation package that made her current salary look modest in comparison. But it was the final paragraph that kept drawing her attention. "As one of the few black women executives in tech, your leadership would be instrumental in our commitment to diversifying Silicon Valley's corporate landscape. We're not just offering you a job, we're offering you a chance to be part of a larger transformation." The words echoed in her mind as she sipped her now cold coffee. The opportunity was incredible. Exactly the kind of platform she dreamed of having to create real change in the industry, but accepting it would mean leaving Prince Industries, leaving Miami, leaving Bo. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Heard about the Tech Future offer. Have you told Bo yet?" Iridessa set her phone down without responding. How could she tell Bo about an opportunity that would take her across the country? Their relationship had deepened over the past months, growing into something profound and real despite the whispers and scrutiny they'd faced. The thought of leaving him made her heart ache, but the thought of staying for him, of potentially compromising her professional journey, was equally painful. The morning traffic was unusually heavy as she drove to the office, giving her more time to wrestle with her thoughts. She'd fought so hard to reach her current position, to prove herself worthy of every opportunity she'd been given. The whispers about her relationship with Bo had been difficult enough to handle. What would people say if she turned down this opportunity to stay with him? As she walked through the Prince Industries lobby, she noticed the subtle changes in how people looked at her. Some smiled with genuine warmth, others watched with barely concealed speculation. The weight of being both a black woman in leadership and the CEO's girlfriend sometimes felt overwhelming, like carrying two separate spotlights that made every move more visible. In her office, she found a small package on her desk. A beautiful journal bound in soft leather, with a note from Bo. "For capturing your brilliant ideas. Love, B." The thoughtfulness of the gift, so perfectly aligned with her habit of documenting everything, made her eyes sting with unshed tears. A knock at her door interrupted her emotional moment. Claire stood there looking uncomfortable. "Miss Dale, there's been some discussion in the break room about the Tech Future rumors." Iridessa's spine straightened. "What rumors?" that they're planning to poach you for their diversity initiative. Some people are suggesting that—" Claire hesitated, then continued, "that you might be better suited there, where your relationship status wouldn't be a factor in how people view your success." The words hit like physical blows, though Iridessa maintained her composed expression. "Thank you for letting me know, Claire." Once alone, Iridessa moved to stand by her window, looking out at the Miami skyline she'd grown to love. The city had become home, Prince Industries had become family, and Bo had become everything she'd never known she was looking for. But the whispers were wearing on her. Despite her documented successes, despite the clear improvements she'd brought to the company, some people still questioned whether her achievements were truly her own. The thought of starting fresh in Silicon Valley, where she could build her reputation solely on her merit, held a powerful appeal. A soft knock drew her attention. Bo stood in the doorway, his expression concerned. "You've been quiet this morning," he said, closing the door behind him. "Want to talk about it?" Iridessa took a deep breath, then handed him her tablet with the Tech Future email displayed. She watched his face as he read, noting the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched then relaxed with obvious effort. "This is an incredible opportunity," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. "Tech Future is at the forefront of sustainable technology development. Their global reach would give you a platform to implement changes on a massive scale." "It is incredible," Iridessa agreed softly, "but it would mean leaving Miami, leaving Prince Industries, leaving us." Bo set the tablet down and moved closer, though he maintained professional distance given their location. "I don't want you to leave," he admitted. "The thought of not seeing you every day, of not having your brilliant mind and beautiful spirit in my life, it physically hurts. But I also don't want to be the reason you turn down an opportunity that could advance your career and your mission for change." His honesty, his willingness to put her professional growth ahead of his personal desires, made Iridessa's heart ache. "I've worked so hard to get here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "To prove myself, to earn every opportunity through merit alone. But these whispers, this constant scrutiny of our relationship—" "I know," Bo said softly. "I see how it weighs on you, even though you never complain. I see the extra hours you put in documenting everything, the careful way you handle every interaction to avoid any hint of impropriety." Iridessa turned to face him fully. "In Silicon Valley, I could start fresh, build my reputation without the shadow of our relationship coloring every achievement, be judged solely on my work, my ideas, my leadership." "You could," Bo agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "And you would be brilliant there, just as you're brilliant here. But Iridessa—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Running from the whispers won't silence them. It might even validate them in some people's minds." She hadn't considered that perspective. "What do you mean?" "If you leave, some people will say it proves their doubts were justified, that our relationship compromised your position here, that you needed to leave to establish yourself independently." Bo ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of deep emotion. "But staying, continuing to excel while being transparent about our relationship, that shows real courage. It sets a precedent for others who might face similar situations." Iridessa sank into her chair, feeling the weight of the decision on her shoulders. "I don't want to be seen as choosing love over career advancement," she admitted. "As a black woman in tech, I feel a responsibility to seize every opportunity, to climb as high as possible, to show others it can be done." Bo knelt beside her chair, no longer concerned with maintaining professional distance. "You've already shown that," he said earnestly. "Your work here, your leadership, your unwavering integrity, You've created a blueprint for success that others can follow. And you've done it while being authentically yourself, while building a personal life that brings you joy. But the whispers will always exist in some form, he finished gently. Whether here or in Silicon Valley, there will always be people who question the achievements of women of color in leadership. The difference is whether you face those challenges alone or with someone who loves and supports you completely. Tears threatened to fall, but Iridessa blinked them back. I've fought so hard to be taken seriously, to be seen as more than just a diversity hire or the CEO's girlfriend. Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying the hopes of every black woman who dreams of corporate leadership, and I'm terrified of letting them down. You could never let them down, Bo said firmly. Your strength, your integrity, your brilliant mind, those things are intrinsic to who you are, not where you work or who you love. Staying here, continuing to excel while being open about our relationship, shows something equally important, that women of color deserve both professional success and personal happiness. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Sharon from HR stood there, looking apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but the board would like to see both of you. In the elevator ride to the boardroom, Iridessa and Bo maintained professional distance, but their earlier conversation hung between them like an unfinished symphony. The choice she faced wasn't just about career advancement. It was about defining success on her own terms, about showing that love and ambition weren't mutually exclusive. The board meeting was intense, but illuminating. The directors had heard about the Tech Future offer and wanted to discuss the implications for Prince Industries. As Iridessa listened to them express their desire to keep her, to support her continued growth within the company, she realized something profound. She had already built something valuable here, not just professional success, but genuine respect and understanding. Later that evening, standing on her balcony overlooking Biscayne Bay, Iridessa finally made her decision. The Miami sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, much like the dawn that had brought the Tech Future email. But now, instead of uncertainty, she felt a deep sense of peace. Bo arrived shortly after she called him, his face showing both hope and resignation, ready to support whatever choice she'd made. She led him to the balcony, where the setting sun created a perfect backdrop for this moment. I'm staying, she said simply. The relief that flooded his features was quickly replaced by concern. Are you sure? I don't want you to regret passing up this opportunity. Iridessa took his hands in hers, feeling the strength and support that had become so precious to her. I'm sure. Not because of you, though you're definitely a factor, but because I believe in what we're building here, professionally and personally. Running from the whispers won't silence them, but staying and succeeding might eventually drown them out. Bo pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. We'll face whatever comes together, he promised, and I'll never stop supporting your growth, your ambitions, your dreams. I know, she said softly. That's part of why I'm choosing to stay. Not because I need you, but because we're stronger together. Because showing that a black woman can have both career success and love might be just as important as any corporate achievement. As the last rays of sunlight painted Miami's skyline in gold, Iridessa felt the rightness of her decision settle into her bones. She had chosen not just to stay with Bo, but to continue building something meaningful, a career marked by excellence, a love based on mutual respect and understanding, and a legacy that might help others facing similar choices. The whispers would continue, she knew, but they no longer held the power to shake her confidence. She had fought too hard, achieved too much, and found too rare a connection to let other people's doubts define her path. Sometimes the bravest choice wasn't in running from challenges, but in facing them head-on, supported by someone who believed in your strength, even when you questioned it yourself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, new chances to show that love and ambition could coexist beautifully. But tonight, standing in Bo's arms as the Miami stars began to emerge, Iridessa knew she had made the right choice, not just for her career or her heart, but for every person who needed to see that it was possible to have it all if you were brave enough to reach for it. Chapter 10. Trust Falls. 2 months after declining TechFuture's offer, Iridessa sat in her office reviewing the latest sustainability reports when an email notification caught her eye. The sender was Victoria Chang, CEO of Quantum Innovations, another major player in the tech industry known for their aggressive recruitment of diverse talent. The subject line was direct: exclusive opportunity, transforming tech leadership. Iridessa's finger hovered over her mouse, her heart rate accelerating slightly. She'd heard rumors that Quantum was planning a major diversity initiative, but hadn't expected to be approached so soon after the TechFuture situation. With a deep breath, she opened the email. The offer was even more impressive than TechFuture's had been. Quantum wasn't just offering her a C-suite position, they wanted to make her the face of their global diversity and innovation program. The compensation package was staggering, including equity stakes and a seat on their board of directors. But it was the personal note from Victoria that really caught her attention. As a woman of color in tech leadership myself, I understand the unique challenges you face. We're not just offering you a job, we're offering you the chance to reshape the industry's landscape from the inside out. A knock at her door made her quickly minimize the email. Bo stood there, his smile warming as it always did when he saw her. "Ready for lunch?" he asked, then paused, noting her expression. "Everything okay?" Iridessa considered deflecting, keeping the offer to herself until she'd had time to process it. But their relationship had been built on honesty, and she wouldn't compromise that now. "Quantum Innovations just reached out," she said, turning her monitor so he could see the email. She watched his face as he read, noting the slight tension in his jaw, the way his hands clasped behind his back, telltale signs of emotional control she'd learned to recognize. But when he looked up, his eyes held only support and understanding. "This is incredible," he said softly. "Their diversity initiative has been making waves in the industry. Having you lead it would be a powerful statement." "It would," Iridessa agreed, standing to join him near the window. The Miami skyline stretched out before them, familiar and dear after all they'd been through together. "But I meant what I said 2 months ago. Running from challenges isn't my style." Bo turned to face her fully. "I trust you," he said simply. "Whatever you decide, whatever's best for your career and your mission, I support you completely." The words hit her with unexpected force. Just months ago, he had tested her loyalty with the Nexus offer, his past betrayal making trust difficult. Now, faced with potentially losing her to a competitor, his first response was support and trust. "I haven't earned this level of trust," she said softly. "Yes, you have," Bo replied immediately. "Every decision you've made, every challenge you've faced, you've shown me what real integrity looks like. You've taught me that trust isn't about control or certainty, but about believing in someone's character, even when faced with uncertainty." Before she could respond, Claire appeared at the door. "Miss Dale, Victoria Chang is on line 1. She says it's important." Iridessa exchanged a look with Bo, who nodded encouragingly. "Take the call. I'll wait." Once alone in her office, Iridessa picked up the phone. "Victoria, thank you for reaching out." "Iridessa," Victoria's voice was warm and confident. "I hope you've had a chance to review our offer. I wanted to speak with you personally about the vision we have for Quantum's future." The conversation that followed was compelling. Victoria painted a picture of systemic change in the tech industry, with Iridessa playing a pivotal role in reshaping corporate culture from the top down. The opportunity to influence policy, mentor emerging leaders, and create pathways for other women of color was everything she'd dreamed of achieving. "We're prepared to make this transition as smooth as possible," Victoria added, "including handling any personal complications that might arise from your current situation." The implication was clear, and it made Iridessa's spine stiffen. "My relationship with Mr. Prince, isn't a complication to be handled," she said firmly. "It's part of who I am, just like my professional achievements and my commitment to creating change." Victoria's pause was telling. "Of course, I apologize if I implied otherwise. We simply want to ensure you have every support needed to focus on your career advancement." After ending the call, Iridessa sat quietly for a moment, processing. The offer was incredible, the opportunity for impact enormous. But something about Victoria's assumption that her relationship with Beau was a problem to be solved bothered her deeply. When Beau returned to her office, his face showed no sign of anxiety or doubt. "How was the call?" he asked, genuinely interested rather than concerned. Iridessa moved to stand beside him at the window. "They're offering everything I've ever wanted professionally," she admitted. "The chance to create real change, to open doors for others, to reshape how the tech industry approaches diversity and innovation." "But," Beau prompted gently, "but they see our relationship as a liability to be managed rather than a strength to be celebrated." She turned to face him fully. "They don't understand that I've achieved everything I have, not in spite of our relationship, but partly because of how you've supported and believed in me." Beau's expression softened with understanding. "Whatever you decide, I trust your judgment. You've more than earned that trust." Looking at him, Iridessa felt the weight of the moment. Here was a man who had once been so wounded by betrayal that he'd tested her loyalty, now standing before her with complete faith in her decisions. The transformation was as meaningful as any professional achievement. "I don't need to decide," she said softly. "I already know what I want. I want to continue building something meaningful here at Prince Industries, where I can create change without compromising who I am or what I believe in. I want to show other women of color that they don't have to choose between professional success and personal happiness." The relief that flooded Beau's features was quickly replaced by determination. "Then, let's make sure you have everything you need to achieve those goals here. Whatever resources, whatever support you need, it's yours." Iridessa smiled, feeling the rightness of her decision settle into her bones. "I already have what I need most. Trust. Real, unconditional trust, earned through actions and integrity rather than tests or promises." Later that evening, as they walked along Miami Beach watching the sunset, Iridessa composed her response to Quantum's offer. The words flowed easily. "While I appreciate the opportunity, I've chosen to remain with Prince Industries, where I can continue building meaningful change while staying true to all aspects of who I am. Thank you for considering me." Beau read the email over her shoulder, his arm warm around her waist. "They're going to regret losing you," he said softly. "Maybe," Iridessa replied, sending the email before tucking her phone away. "But I won't regret staying. Sometimes the greatest opportunities aren't about climbing higher, but about building something deeper and more meaningful where you are." As they walked along the shore, the Miami sunset painting the sky in brilliant colors, Iridessa reflected on how far they'd come. From that first meeting in his office to the storms that had brought them closer, from the whispers they'd faced to the trust they'd built, every step had led them here, to a place where they could face any challenge together. The beach was quiet except for the gentle sound of waves and their footsteps in the sand. Beau's hand was warm in hers. his presence a constant reminder that she didn't have to choose between professional success and personal happiness. She could have both, could be both. A powerful black woman in tech leadership and half of a love story that defied corporate politics and social expectations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, new chances to create change. But tonight, walking hand in hand with a man who trusted her completely, Iridessa knew she had made the right choice. Sometimes the greatest trust fall wasn't about letting yourself fall, but about having the courage to stand tall exactly where you were, supported by someone who believed in your strength as much as you did. Chapter 11. The Question. The Miami sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink as Beau Prince paced the deck of his yacht, the Second Chance. Everything had to be perfect for tonight. The private chef was preparing Iridessa's favorite dishes, the table was set with fine china and crystal, and soft jazz played through the boat's sound system. But it was the small velvet box in his pocket that made his heart race with anticipation and nerves. He'd spent months designing the ring, working with a black female jeweler Iridessa had once mentioned admiring. The result was stunning, a unique design that incorporated both traditional elements and African influences, featuring a flawless center diamond surrounded by smaller stones set in a pattern inspired by Adinkra symbols representing love, wisdom, and unity. "Mr. Prince?" The yacht's captain approached. "Miss Dale's car just arrived at the marina." Beau nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. After everything they'd been through together, the initial testing of trust, the storms both literal and metaphorical, the whispers and challenges they'd faced, this moment felt like both an ending and a beginning. Iridessa appeared on the dock, taking his breath away as she always did. She wore a flowing ivory dress that complemented her deep brown skin perfectly. Her natural curls styled in an elegant updo with a few tendrils framing her face. Even after all this time, the sight of her still made his heart skip a beat. "This is quite the surprise," she said as he helped her aboard, her smile warming him from the inside out. "When you said dinner, I assumed you meant our usual place." "Tonight called for something special," he replied, leading her to the upper deck, where he'd created an intimate dining area. The setting sun cast everything in golden light, making Iridessa's skin glow like she was lit from within. Her eyes widened as she took in the elaborate setup, the flowers, the candles, the city skyline, creating a perfect backdrop. "Beau," she breathed. "What's all this?" Before he could respond, the chef appeared with their first course, a sophisticated take on the southern comfort food Iridessa had grown up with, reimagined with premium ingredients. As they dined, they talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as naturally as it had since their first real dinner together. "Do you remember that stormy night in the office?" Beau asked as they finished their main course, the Miami stars now twinkling overhead. "When the power went out and everything changed between us." Iridessa smiled, the memory clearly fond. "How could I forget? Though I seem to recall being very professional about the whole thing." "You were," he agreed, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You've always balanced everything so gracefully. Your professional excellence, your personal integrity, the additional pressures you face as a black woman in leadership. You've shown me what real strength looks like." The yacht swayed gently with the waves, the motion somehow adding to the intimacy of the moment. Iridessa's eyes softened as she looked at him, seeing past his CEO exterior to the man who had learned to trust again because of her. "When you first walked into my office," Beau continued, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm, "I was broken in ways I didn't even realize. Sarah's betrayal had made me build walls so high I couldn't see past them. But you—" He paused, emotion making his voice rough. You didn't try to break down those walls. You showed me they weren't necessary. That real trust is built through actions and integrity, not tests and trials. Iridessa squeezed his hand gently, understanding the depth of what he was saying. We built something real, she said softly, something based on mutual respect and understanding. We did, Bo agreed, standing and drawing her up with him. The Miami skyline sparkled behind them as he led her to the yacht's railing, where the city lights reflected off the dark water like scattered stars. You've transformed everything, my company, my perspective, my heart. You've shown me that love doesn't have to compromise integrity, that trust can be rebuilt, that second chances are possible if you're brave enough to take them. As he spoke, he reached into his pocket with his free hand, fingers closing around the velvet box. Iridessa's breath caught as she began to realize what was happening. The moment you walked into my office, you commanded attention not just with your beauty, but with your brilliant mind and unwavering principles. Every day since then, you've shown me new depths of strength, new heights of excellence, new ways to be better, as a CEO, as a man, as a partner. Dropping to one knee, Bo opened the box to reveal the ring. Iridessa's hand flew to her mouth as she recognized the Adinkra symbols worked into the design, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. Iridessa Dale, he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, you've taught me that real love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It's about showing up every day, choosing each other through challenges and triumphs, building something meaningful together. Will you continue building with me? Will you marry me? Tears rolled down Iridessa's dark cheeks as she looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the future he was offering. You remembered, she whispered, touching one of the Adinkra symbols. From that conversation months ago about my grandmother's jewelry. I remember everything about you, Bo said softly. The way you fight for what you believe in, the way you lift others as you climb, the way you've shown me what real partnership looks like. I want to spend the rest of my life learning more, growing together, facing whatever challenges come our way as a team. Iridessa pulled him to his feet, her eyes shining with joy and tears. Yes, she said simply, then again with more emphasis, yes, 1,000 times yes. As Bo slipped the ring onto her finger, his own eyes suspiciously bright, the Miami night seemed to wrap around them like a warm embrace. The ring caught the light of the stars and city, the symbols of love and unity, now a permanent reminder of their journey together. It's perfect, Iridessa said softly, admiring how the design honored both her heritage and their shared future. Just like this moment, this night, this journey we're on together. Bo pulled her close, one hand cradling her face, while the other rested at her waist. I love you, he said simply, the words carrying the weight of everything they'd built together, not just for who you are, but for who you've helped me become. Their kiss was sweet and deep, filled with promises for the future and appreciation for the path that had led them here. When they finally parted, Iridessa rested her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat while the waves lapped gently against the yacht. We're going to face questions, she said after a moment, practical even in this romantic setting. The media, the industry, people who still doubt the authenticity of our relationship. Let them question, Bo replied, his arms tightening around her. We'll answer with the same thing we always have, excellence, integrity, and the proof that love doesn't diminish professional success. It enhances it. As they stood together on the yacht, the Miami night wrapping around them like a velvet cloak, both knew this was more than just an engagement. It was a statement about love transcending boundaries, about trust being rebuilt from broken pieces, about the possibility of having both career success and personal happiness. The ring on Iridessa's finger caught the starlight, the adinkra symbols a testament to the thoughtfulness and respect that characterized their relationship. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of how far they'd come, from that first meeting in his office to this moment under the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove their love and commitment. But tonight, on the gently rocking yacht with the Miami skyline as their witness, they had taken another step in their journey together. The question had been asked and answered, not just with words, but with the deep understanding that came from building something real and meaningful together. As they sailed through the Miami night, celebrating their engagement with champagne and soft jazz, both Bo and Iridessa knew they had found something rare and precious. A love that celebrated their differences while cherishing their connection, a partnership that made them both better versions of themselves. The night stretched on, filled with kisses and promises, plans and dreams, and through it all, the ring on Iridessa's finger caught the light. The symbols of love and unity, a constant reminder that sometimes the greatest leaps of faith lead to the most beautiful landings. Chapter 12. Full Circle. The waves lapped gently at the pristine shores of South Beach as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and rose. White chairs lined the sand in elegant rows, while an arch, woven with tropical flowers and African fabrics, marked the spot where two lives would be joined as one. The intimate beachfront setting perfectly reflected the couple who had chosen it, sophisticated yet warm, combining corporate power with personal meaning. Iridessa stood in the beachfront suite, her heart full as she gazed at her reflection. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece that honored both her professional success and her cultural heritage. The modern silhouette of silk and lace was accented with subtle patterns inspired by traditional African textiles, while her natural hair was styled in elaborate braids adorned with pearls and cowrie shells. A crown fit for a modern queen who had earned her place in both the corporate world and love's domain. "You look absolutely breathtaking," Maya said, helping to adjust her sister's train. "Like everything you are came together in one perfect moment." The breeze carried the scent of ocean and flowers through the open windows, along with the soft murmur of gathered guests below. Leaders from Miami's corporate world mingled with family members, while Prince Industries employees chatted with Iridessa's old friends from her early tech days. It was a testament to how she and Bo had bridged worlds, bringing together different aspects of their lives, just as they had brought together their hearts. A knock at the door revealed Claire, Bo's faithful assistant, who had become a dear friend through all their shared experiences. "It's time," she said softly, her eyes bright with happy tears. "And Miss Dale, Mr. Prince asked me to give you this." She handed over a small package wrapped in golden paper. Inside, Iridessa found a leather-bound journal, similar to the one he'd given her months ago, with a note inscribed on the first page: "For writing the next chapter of our story together, all my love, Bo." Tears threatened to fall, but Iridessa blinked them back, mindful of her carefully applied makeup. The journal was so perfectly them, acknowledging her habit of documenting everything important while looking forward to their shared future. As the sunset ceremony began, guests turned to watch her approach down the sand-strewn aisle. But Iridessa's eyes were fixed on Bo, standing beneath the arch in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking at her with such love and pride that her heart felt ready to burst. Their vows were both personal and profound, acknowledging the journey that had brought them to this moment. Bo spoke of how she had taught him to trust again, how her integrity and brilliance had shown him what real partnership looked like. Iridessa spoke of finding someone who supported both her professional ambitions and her personal growth, who understood the unique challenges she faced and stood beside her through them all. "With this ring," Bo said, sliding a band designed to complement her unique engagement ring, "I promise to continue growing with you, supporting your dreams while building our own together." "With this ring," Iridessa responded, her voice clear and strong, "I promise to keep choosing us every day, building something meaningful together while staying true to who we are." As they exchanged their final vows with the ocean as their witness, both reflected on their remarkable journey. From cautious CEO and ambitious VP to partners in life, they had discovered that true love requires courage, honesty, and the willingness to be vulnerable again. The reception celebrated their union with the same blend of elegance and warmth that characterized their relationship. Tables set up on the beach featured both gourmet cuisine and soul food favorites, while the music alternated between jazz standards and Afro beats. It was a perfect representation of how they had built something unique together, honoring both their individual identities and their shared future. As they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Bo held Iridessa close, whispering, "Thank you for teaching me to trust again." She smiled, her hand resting protectively over her growing belly, a secret they would share with their loved ones later that evening. 1 year later, their love multiplied with the arrival of twin boys, Kai and Atlas Prince. The babies were perfect blends of both parents, with beautiful caramel skin, curly hair, and their father's striking green eyes. The proud parents found even greater joy in watching their sons grow, their family a living testament that love knows no boundaries. Iridessa continued to excel as Vice President of Operations at Prince Industries, her leadership helping to transform the company into a model of sustainable innovation and inclusive excellence. Her success, achieved while openly embracing her role as wife and mother, showed other women of color in corporate leadership that they didn't have to choose between professional achievement and personal fulfillment. Bo became known not just as a successful CEO, but as a champion for change in corporate culture, supporting initiatives that made the tech industry more accessible and inclusive. His transformation from a man wounded by betrayal to one who had learned to trust and love again inspired others to believe in second chances. Their story became legendary in Miami's corporate circles, not just as a romance, but as proof that love could heal old wounds, that trust could be rebuilt, and that sometimes the greatest risks bring the greatest rewards. In each other, they had found not just a partner, but a home for their hearts, a love that celebrated their differences while cherishing their connection. And now, with their twin boys completing their family, their happiness knew no bounds. Each day brought new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities to show the world what true partnership looked like. They had proved that love could transcend corporate politics, cultural differences, and past hurts, creating something beautiful and lasting in its place. As they sat together on their beachfront balcony, watching their sons play in the last light of day, Bo and Iridessa knew they had built something extraordinary, a love story that was also a testament to the power of trust, integrity, and the courage to be vulnerable again. Their journey had come full circle, from that first meeting in his office to this moment of complete fulfillment, proving that sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones written by two people brave enough to give love a second chance. Stop! Before you go any further, how will you find me in this huge world of fake channels? You might think they are Mr. Peter, but they are just using Al to clone my voice. Don't be fooled. Subscribe to my official channel and become part of this beautiful family. Let's stay together and keep the real stories alive.